Call off your wedding immediately, get up in the morning, go to your mother-in-law's house. And you will see everything. My deceased grandmother told me this in a dream. Just one day before my wedding, and when I arrived at my mother-in-law's home, I froze, paralyzed by what I saw. But before I continue, tell me in the comments what city you're listening from. I'd love to know how far my story has traveled. Serafina Sarah Na was 30 years old. She wore soft cotton sweatpants and a loose, shapeless t-shirt. The kind she used when she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her face still damp from the shower steam in the reflection. She saw the usual large eyes, lashes free of mascara, and her natural hair pulled back forcefully. What she didn't see but what she deeply felt was an anxiety she couldn't fully explain. The calendar hanging in the hallway marked exactly 21 days until her wedding, a dream wedding. A gown already purchased, invitations sent, everything was ready, everything decided, yet a deep sense of unease settled in her chest that morning. She opened the window, letting the cold January air rush in. Sarah lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood in the hills of Atlanta, Georgia, where the mornings were crisp and neighbors mostly kept to themselves. She loved the silence of her condo, though sometimes, like today, she felt that silence also took its toll on her. Sarah was a senior accountant at a major import-export firm. She had built her life step by step through hard work and sacrifice. She inherited the apartment from her parents, who had passed away in a tragic accident 8 years earlier. Her younger brother was stationed overseas with the military, and her girlfriends were almost all married. After avoiding it for so long, after so many disappointments, she had finally decided to give her heart to someone. Kellen DuBois. He was tall, with a deep voice, a confident smile, brown eyes, and was 37 years old. He owned a small logistics business that, according to him, was rapidly expanding. Sarah had met him by chance during a bank appointment. He needed help reviewing some complex financial documents, and she was the only professional available at that moment. He was courteous and interesting. Sarah hadn't seen it coming, but within weeks they were having dinner together, talking about future dreams, and he was starting to feature in her long-term plans. Kellen was different. He didn't have the adolescent air of the men she had known before. He didn't play games or try to be mysterious. He was direct and had that protective touch that, even if she didn't openly admit it, made her feel seen and cherished. He proposed 3 months earlier at the swankiest restaurant they knew. Sarah remembered the smooth jazz piano music, the candlelight, and the waiter who suddenly appeared with a champagne flute holding the ring. It wasn't flashy, it was just right. Kellen knelt in the middle of the tables as other diners applauded. Sarah laughed, overwhelmed with emotion. She said yes without much thought, and that was what tormented her today. Why didn't she think more? That morning, after coffee, she received a text from him. My mother wants to see us this afternoon. She's excited about the reception details. Can you make it? Sarah's finger trembled as she typed. Yes, of course, it was the polite thing to do, the logical thing, but she couldn't forget the first time she visited that house. She remembered every detail. Patrice DuBois, Kellen's mother, greeted them wearing a spotless apron, a tight bun on her head, and a look that seemed to measure Sarah's worth with an invisible tape measure. She was smiling but critical, educated but sharp. And you live alone? She asked bluntly, pouring tea without looking Sarah in the eye. Yes, I do, Sarah replied. I inherited the condo from my parents a few years ago. Which area? Over near Buckhead. Patrice observed her as if Sarah had just told her she lived on Mars. Nice neighborhood, very sought after. That night, as they were doing the dishes, Kellen quietly told her, don't take it personally, my mother was raised old school. She has trouble trusting people. Sarah didn't respond, but she never forgot the way Patrice, in between questions about Sarah's income, debt, inheritance, and family, avoided talking about her own son. The only thing Patrice said about Kellen was, he's very good at business, but he needs a stable woman like you. Stability, always that word. Mid-afternoon, Sarah was in her office when an idea burst in like lightning. What if I don't get married? What if I don't really know the man I'm about to share my life with? She looked at her planner. Everything was there, timelines, payment. Sarah, what a surprise. Weren't you coming this afternoon with Kellen? I wanted to talk to you alone. Patrice observed her with a tight smile. Of course, come in. I was just making a little something to eat. Sarah entered. The house smelled of old coffee. Patrice led her to the dining room where a folder of papers lay open on the table. I'm just reviewing the paperwork for the event venue, she said. But what Sarah didn't know was that the folder had nothing to do with the wedding. While Patrice went to the kitchen, Sarah took a quick glance. Names, lists, addresses, and a title. Single homeowners. A shiver ran down her body. Then she understood. The woman who left through the back door was not just a casual visitor. And Patrice was not just an intrusive future mother-in-law. Sarah swallowed hard, her heart hammered against her chest. Right there in that house where everything seemed orderly and quiet, her life began to crumble. Patrice returned from the hallway with a tray of dry cookies and a smile as fake as the embroidered tablecloth. Do you like chamomile tea, Sarah? It's calming, she said, placing the cup in front of her with slightly trembling hands. It's fine. Thank you, Sarah replied without taking her eyes off the folder she had just seen. She had subtly closed it as soon as she heard the footsteps returning. Even so, her mind kept replaying what she had managed to read: names of women, addresses, columns with titles like marital status and sole property owner. Everything was in legible handwriting with notes in the margins. Patrice sat down across the table. Sarah looked at her. Her mannerisms seemed the same, but there was a strange glint in her eyes, an uncomfortable stiffness, as if she knew she was acting and feared being found out. Everything all right, Sarah? Patrice asked softly. You look a little pale. Yes. Of course, I just woke up early. Lying felt easy. As if Patrice's presence activated a defense mechanism Sarah didn't know she had. While she took a sip of the tea, her thoughts were a dense cloud. Who was that woman who left through the back? Why did the folder contain such sensitive information? Why was Patrice acting as if everything was fine when it clearly wasn't? Tell me, Sarah, Patrice said, playing with a napkin. Are you happy with Kellen? The question dropped like a stone in the water. Sarah looked at her surprised. Of course, she replied. Why do you ask? No reason. Weddings always bring stress, doubts, things you think you had already settled. And later, when you're already married, you realize there were tiny signs that you preferred to ignore. Are you referring to your marriage? Patrice laughed, but without humor. I didn't marry for love, Sarah. I married because it looked good. Because back then, a woman without a husband was frowned upon. But don't worry, you're not like me. What do you mean? You have something I never had. Property in your name, a stable career, control over your life. Kellen needs a woman like that. You balance him out, Sarah swallowed. The conversation was a bizarre mix of praise and manipulation. Every word seemed to have a hidden meaning. And what do you think of Kellen? Sarah asked. Patrice looked at her for a moment, her smile gone. He is my son. That's not what I asked you. I know him better than anyone. I know what he's capable of and what he needs. Kellen has flaws like everyone. But he also has a big heart. Does that woman who left through the back door think so, too? The question was direct. A gunshot in the middle of the dining room. Patrice tensed. What are you talking about? I saw her, Patrice. I saw a woman leave through the back when I rang the bell. Blonde, young, she looked like she was in a hurry. That must have been someone from the neighborhood. Sometimes I watch the kid of a neighbor who works nearby, and that neighbor leaves without her child. Patrice held her gaze for a few seconds. Then she sighed, got up, and went toward a wooden cabinet. She opened one of the drawers, pulled out a photo album, and let it drop onto the table in front of Sarah. You want to know who she was? Then look. The tone had changed, harsher, less motherly. Sarah opened the album. At first, everything seemed normal: old photos of Kellen as a child, birthdays, beach trips, Christmases. But when she reached the more recent pages, her breathing hitched. There was Kellen, standing next to a slim blonde woman with a wide smile and a red dress. He had his arm around her waist. They were standing in front of a house Sarah didn't recognize. The date was written with a marker in one corner, June of last year, only 1 year ago. Sarah turned the page, more photos of them together in a restaurant, on a terrace, and at what looked like a wedding. In the image, Kellen wore a dark suit, and the blonde woman wore white. It was more informal than a traditional wedding, but the image left no room for doubt. What is this? Sarah asked, her voice breaking. A phase that is over, Patrice replied, unfazed. Kellen was with her. Yes, it was a little crazy. Everything happened so fast, but it didn't work out. She was troubled, too emotional. She wanted to control him. In the end, it was better that they separated. They got married. That's his business and hers. Sarah slammed the album shut. Her hands were shaking. Why did he never tell me anything? And did you ask him? The silence was absolute. Patrice sat down again. Her expression was different now, more serious, more real. Listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you, Sarah. There are things that are better not to know. Sometimes the past is just that, the past. Stirring it up only brings pain. And what about the deception? Do you think anyone gets saved from that? Sarah got up. She couldn't take it anymore. She walked quickly to the door and opened it. Patrice didn't move. If you truly want to marry Kellen, she said, accept that there are parts of his life that you will neither understand nor control. Marriage is not a contract between angels. Sarah walked out without replying. The drive back to Atlanta felt long. The traffic seemed endless. But she didn't see the cars or hear the noise. She only thought about the blonde woman, the photos, the folder, and everything she had ignored for the sake of love. That night, when Kellen arrived at her condo, Sarah was sitting on the sofa with the album in her hands. He walked in with a Smile as if nothing were wrong. He carried a bag of Chinese takeout and a bottle of winey hay. Beautiful, look what I got, your favorite. He placed the bag on the counter and took off his jacket. How was the meeting with my mom? Sarah looked up. Why didn't you tell me you were married? Kellen froze. The silence became thick. Then he looked down, ran a hand over his face and sat across from her. What did my mom tell you? I saw the pictures. You married that woman. It was complicated, and why didn't you tell me about it? Because it doesn't matter, Sarah, listen to me, it was a mistake. Something that happened very fast. It lasted less than 6 months. She was unstable. Did you meet her at the bank, too? Kellen didn't answer. Did you ask her to sell her house, too? His gaze changed. For the first time, he seemed truly annoyed. What are you talking about? I saw a folder at your mother's house, a list of women with property. All single. What is that? You have no right to snoop. In our business? Is that what you call preparing for a wedding? Lower your tone. Answer me, Kellen. I don't have anything to explain. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and looked at Sarah with an expression she had never seen before, cold. Distant. Not everyone has a clean past, Sarah, but you aren't perfect either, are you? I'm not talking about perfection. I'm talking about lies. Then keep your doubts. I don't have to justify myself. He stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door shut. Sarah was left alone with the photos on the table and an empty feeling in her stomach. That wasn't hunger, her world was shattering. And she didn't know which part to pick up first. She couldn't sleep that night, not because she missed Kellen, but because deep down she felt the nightmare was only just beginning. And her grandmother's dream, far from being an exaggerated warning, was starting to look too much like a prophecy fulfilled. Sarah spent the entire night awake. Her eyes were fixed on the ceiling, her breathing irregular and her mind spinning in relentless circles. The images assaulted her like flashes of lightning. The blonde woman leaving through the back of the house, the folder with names and properties, the photo album with a previous wedding, Kellen's cold reaction. She didn't know if she felt rage, fear, or shame, perhaps all of them at once. Dawn arrived mercilessly. She got up, drained of energy, made coffee, and let it go cold without tasting it. She was still wearing the same pajamas from the night before. Her phone vibrated on the counter. It was Mariama, her best friend since college, the only person she could be totally honest with without feeling she had to justify every emotion. Are you okay? Mariama asked when she answered. Sarah took a second to reply. No, can you come over? 30 minutes later, Mariama was sitting in the living room with a notebook in her hands like they were makeshift detectives. Her hair was pulled back in a tight braid, and she wore the expression of someone ready to dig up secrets, no matter the cost. Tell me everything from the beginning, Mariama urged firmly. Sarah did. From the first day she met Kellen at the bank. Branch to her grandmother's dream, the folder, the photo with the blonde woman, and the final argument. Mariama didn't interrupt. She just nodded silently, taking mental notes. When Sarah finished, Mariama exhaled loudly. We have to find out who that woman is. How? Social media. He has an Instagram account, right? Yeah, but he doesn't post much, almost nothing personal. Then we'll check the comments, the followers, who he follows. Social media says more than people realize. They turned on the laptop. Mariama typed quickly while Sarah dictated the name she remembered and the profile she had seen. In the album, they searched for Kellen first. His account was private, but the list of people he followed was public. Mariama began to review them one by one. There are a lot of women, she said. Some have normal usernames, others use weird pseudonyms. Let's check the ones with photos similar to the blonde you saw. Sarah leaned closer and observed each profile. Many were private, others were very active, but with superficial content. Just as they were about to close the laptop, Mariama stopped. Wait, this one. The profile read, Lisa Morrow B. It was a modest account with few posts, but in one of the photos taken just over a year ago, Kellen appeared embracing the same woman Sarah had seen in the album. Same face, same hair, same red dress. Sarah felt a hollow pit in her stomach. That's her? Mariama opened the photo. The caption read, He makes me feel safe. Thanks for coming into my life. This is from last year, Mariama confirmed. How long have you been with Kellen? 11 months. Then there was an overlap. A shiver ran down Sarah's arms. What do we do? I'll write to her from my account. You can't show up, not yet. Mariama drafted a brief but empathetic message. Hi, Lisa. Sorry for reaching out like this out of nowhere. I have a delicate situation involving Kellen Dubois. I'd like to talk to you, please. This is not a joke. They sent it. Hours passed. Sarah couldn't concentrate on anything. Mariama stayed with her all day. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the response arrived. Who are you? What do you know about Kellen? Mariama showed her the message. Sarah felt her heart beating like a drum. I just need to know if you were with him last year. Things aren't adding up. Please, I need to talk to you, it's important. 20 minutes passed before Lisa sent another message. Yes, I was with him, I married him. Who are you? Sarah took Mariama's phone and wrote with trembling fingers, I'm Serafina Anna, I am his fiancé. The reply came quickly, oh, God, followed by another message, we need to talk, but not here. Can we meet? I have something to show you. Mariama and Sarah agreed to meet the next day at a coffee shop downtown. The place was open with large windows and always had people, it felt safe. Sarah barely slept that night, but this time it wasn't out of fear. It was from a desperate desire to know, to understand, to confirm what she already suspected. The next day, Sarah arrived 10 minutes early. Mariama went with her but sat at a different table to observe from a distance. Lisa arrived on time. She was thinner than she looked in the photos. Her face was tired with dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was pulled back in a loose bun. You're Sarah, she said without greeting. Sarah nodded. They both sat down. Tell me everything. Lisa said, her voice raspy. How long have you been with him? Almost a year. I told my friend everything. We started looking on social media. You popped up. Lisa looked down, pulled a folder out of her purse and placed it on the table. Everything is here. Copies of the documents for the house I sold, messages from him, the police report. Even though it was useless, Sarah opened the folder. The papers were neatly organized, public deed of sale, bank deposit slip in Kellen Dubois's name. A printed WhatsApp message where he promised her in 6 months. I'm going to give you the house you deserve. What happened after you sold? He vanished. He took all the money, changed his number, blocked me. I went to his house. And his mother told me he was traveling, that she didn't know anything. You didn't file a police report, of course, but there was no way, legally, it wasn't theft. I sold willingly. He didn't force me. I didn't leave any record that the money was for him. I didn't sign anything. Sarah felt a knot in her throat. And how did you meet him? At the bank, too. I went to do some paperwork. He helped me with some documents. He seemed kind. We started dating from there. He told me I was different, that he had finally found a mature, strong, secure woman, and I believed him. You never suspected anything. I did. But I confused it with normal stuff, that he didn't talk about his job, that he didn't introduce me to all his friends, that he was always so careful with his cell phone, but I thought he had trauma. I felt sorry for him. Sarah took a deep breath. I swear I didn't know anything. Lisa nodded, her face softened. It's not your fault either. He's a professional. He doesn't improvise. He has everything calculated. Do you know if he's done this before? I don't have proof, but his mother knows everything she covers for him. And there was another woman, Simone. I overheard her name once. Kellen mentioned her by mistake, thinking I was asleep. Do you know anything about her? Only that she disappeared. No one knows where she is. They think she moved to another state, or maybe something worse happened. Sarah felt her stomach clench. You think, I don't know, but if I hadn't had my sister nearby, maybe I would have ended up the same way. I got depressed. I shut myself away. I lost my friends. I didn't trust anyone. And now I work part-time. I'm recovering, but I have nothing of my own. Everything went with him. Sarah remained silent. She looked at the papers, the names, the dates. Everything fit. Can I keep this? Do it? And if you can, report him, even if it doesn't put him in jail. At least he won't do the same thing again. They said goodbye without a hug. Lisa walked toward the street as if carrying 1,000 pounds on her back. Sarah stayed alone at the table, looking at the papers. Mariama approached, her face distraught. You heard her? Yes, Sarah replied. And she's not the only one. That night, while reviewing the documents in her condo, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. Sarah answered. Hello, a woman's voice, low, almost a whisper. Are you Serafina Na? Who is this? I can't say my name, but listen to me carefully. Don't marry Kellen. He is not who he says he is. Sarah was speechless. Who are you? Just someone who knew him. He ran off with everything I had. Don't let the same thing happen to you, please. And she hung up. Sarah stood alone with the phone still to her ear as it began to rain outside. The rain wasn't heavy, but it had that persistent sound that seemed to drag dark thoughts, memories one would prefer to bury. The echo of the anonymous voice still floated in the air of her condo, as if every corner had heard it. Don't marry Kellen. He is not who he says he is. She turned off the phone with cold hands. She felt a pressure in her chest, a weight she could no longer ignore. What at first seemed like a bad feeling had transformed into a truth that haunted her every step. She was engaged to a man who built his life on lies. The next morning, before even having coffee, she dialed Mariama's number. Her voice sounded decisive with no room for doubt. I need an investigator, a good one. Someone who doesn't just search social media. I want real evidence. Mariama didn't ask questions. She sent her the contact of someone trustworthy, a man named Vernon Gabe Arriaga, a former police officer, now a private detective. He had a reputation for being discreet and meticulous. Sarah called his number without thinking. The appointment was in a small office located in an old building downtown. Gabe was a man in his 50s with a trimmed beard and gray eyes that seemed to see more than they should. He listened carefully while Sarah explained everything. He didn't interrupt even once. He only took notes with a blue ballpoint pen that looked worn out from writing other people's truths. "Do you have proof?" he asked when she finished. "Only this," Sarah replied, handing him the folder Lisa had given her and a couple of messages and an anonymous call. Gabe quickly glanced through the documents. "This is enough to start, but not enough for a formal report. Let's see what else is out there. How much time do you need?" "Depends on how many bodies the guy has in the closet, but I warn you, if what you're telling me is true, you won't like what I find." "I don't like anything anymore, Gabe. I just want the truth." Gabe looked at her for a few seconds as if measuring her resilience. Then he nodded. "I'll call you in 1 week." The following days were torture. Sarah lived with her phone glued to her hand, waiting for news. She avoided Kellen with simple excuses: work meetings, headaches, accumulated workload. He responded with understanding and sweet messages as if he genuinely worried about her well-being. That was the most unbearable part: the theater. The constant performance of a man who knew how to fake perfection. On the 7th day exactly, Gabe called. "I have what you asked for. Can you come today?" Sarah didn't hesitate. Gabe received her in the same office. But this time there was a thick sealed envelope and a black folder with her name handwritten on it. Resting on the desk. She sat in front of him. Gabe wasn't smiling. "I'd be lying if I told you this is the worst thing I've ever seen," he began, "but it's close. Kellen DuBois doesn't exist, not legally, at least." Sarah felt her stomach clench. "What do you mean? His real name is Maurice Julian Torres Maynes. He has used at least 5 different aliases in the last 10 years. Each with seemingly legal documentation, but all with inconsistencies: altered birth certificates, passports with fake stamps, duplicate social security numbers. He's a master of camouflage." Gabe opened the folder and showed her several copies. "This is his first registered marriage to a woman named Pet Harris, 12 years ago. It lasted 8 months. She transferred her retirement fund to him and he disappeared. Then came his second wife, Simone Diaz, the same one Lisa mentioned. There's no record of her whereabouts from 6 years ago. Officially, she's not dead, but there's an active missing person report. And the third, Lisa Morrow, 1 year ago. She, as you know, sold her house on his recommendation, all legal. But he disappeared before she could buy a new one. In all cases, the patterns repeat: women with their own assets, without close family networks. Emotionally vulnerable, Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. She clenched her fists on her legs to keep from crying. "And his job fake. The company he told you he had doesn't exist. It never did. He has profiles created with simulated data, websites that look real but aren't officially registered. It's a facade." "And his mother?" Gabe paused. "Patrice DuBois is real, but she's also part of the game. She doesn't just cover for him, she actively participates. In fact, there's something else." He opened another folder. "She has a cousin, Yvonne DuBois, a real estate broker. She's the one who contacts the victims, talks to them about secure investments, and helps them sell their properties. She managed the sale of Lisa's house. She's also mentioned into other similar scams." Sarah gagged and took a deep breath. "And is there another woman now?" Gabe nodded. Double quotes, "Yes, her name is Imani Carter, 28 years old. She lives on the north side of the city. She works at a medical center. Kellen, or rather Maurice, met her 3 months ago. They've been dating since then. She doesn't know about you, and he's already talked to her about investing together." Sarah covered her face with her hands. Tears fell uncontrollably. "What do I do with all this?" "You can report him, although the process will be long and exhausting. Or you can confront him directly, but you run a risk." Sarah thought for a few seconds. "I want to look him in the eye." Gabe looked at her seriously. "Then don't go alone." She nodded. She left the office with the folder in her hand and her soul in pieces. Mariama was waiting for her in the car. Seeing her expression, she didn't ask questions. She just started the engine and drove in silence. That night, Sarah texted Kellen. "I want to see you at my place tomorrow at 8 p.m. He replied quickly. "Sure, love. Everything okay? Just want to talk." The next morning was endless. Sarah made sure the camera system was working. Gabe had installed 2 hidden devices the day before. One in the frame of the dining room artwork, the other in a lamp in the hallway. Mariama would stay in the bedroom, ready to intervene if anything got out of hand. At 8 on the dot, the doorbell rang. Sarah opened the door. Kellen was impeccable in his white shirt and his usual smile. "Hey, gorgeous, I missed you." Sarah didn't reply. She stepped aside and gestured for him to enter. He walked in without noticing anything strange. He sat on the sofa as if it were his own home. So, what's the big mystery? Are you going to surprise me? Sarah sat across from him. The black folder was on the coffee table. I want you to look at this. Kellen opened it. He read the first page, then the second. His expression changed. The smile vanished. His eyes hardened. Where did you get this? From someone who actually tells the truth. You have no idea what you're doing. I think I do. You're making a mistake, and the only mistake was believing in you. He slammed the folder shut. He leaned toward her. You don't know who you're messing with, Sarah. Are you threatening me? He smiled, but it wasn't his usual smile. It was cruel. You messed with the wrong people. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and left. Sarah didn't move until she heard the front door close. Then she ran to the bedroom, where Mariama was already standing with her phone in hand. You recorded everything, every second. Sarah breathed, but it wasn't relief. It was the beginning of a war. The silence in the condo became dense, as if the walls had heard every one of Kellen's words and also knew that something terrible was coming. Mariama slowly closed the bedroom door, the video recorded and protected on her phone. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed and looked down. She wasn't scared yet, but she had a clear awareness of what she had just provoked. She had crossed an invisible line. She was no longer the woman who had been deceived. Now she was the woman who had exposed an entire web of lies, and in Kellen's world, that was declaring war. The first thing she did was cancel the wedding. She called the event planning company, the banquet hall, the florist, all of them one by one. Each call was a liberation, yet also a wound because the pain didn't stop. Not the pain of lost love, but of the deception, the depth of it, the systematic nature, the planning, the cruelty. A few days later, the other things started. At first, they were small, a call from a blocked number that hung up as soon as she answered. Then another with a distorted voice that only repeated her name and hung up. Sarah thought it was a coincidence or maybe a bad joke, but deep inside, she knew it was no game. It was the beginning of punishment. One morning, when she went down to the building's parking garage to go to work, she found a folded white envelope tucked under her car's windshield wiper. The paper had no return address inside. A message was written in large black letters. You're playing with fire. It burns bright but kills slow. Sarah froze. Her fingers trembled. She looked around. No one, just the echo of other residents' footsteps heading to the elevator. She quickly put the paper in her purse and went back up to her condo. She called out of work that day and immediately called Gabe. They've started, she told him bluntly. I told you that would happen. Do you have the envelope? Yes. I'm on my way. Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone. 30 minutes later, Gabe was knocking. He carried a briefcase and wore a somber expression. He examined the paper, photographed it, and stored it in a plastic evidence bag. This isn't just intimidation. This is a notice. It's his way of telling you that you're no longer playing on his turf. Now you're a threat. What do? We're going to install cameras, one at the door, one in the hallway, and I'm leaving you a panic button activated and I get an alert immediately. You can't be alone anymore, Sarah. She slept with a tight heart that night. Mariama stayed with her. Asleep on the sofa, Gabe promised he would move contacts at the district attorney's office. The evidence was overwhelming, not only from his investigation but also from the testimonies of Lissa and other victims, who had been encouraged to speak after Sarah, with Mariama's help, contacted them. The file was building, but there was still no arrest warrant, only an open investigation. The following week was worse. When Sarah returned from the supermarket, she found her apartment door ajar, not forced, just unlocked. Her heart pounded. She didn't enter. She slowly backed away, pulled out her phone, and called Gabe. They're inside. My door is open. Don't go in. I'm coming now. Call the police. The officers arrived quickly and checked the apartment. Nothing was stolen. No broken glass. No ransacked drawers. Nothing except the cabinet where she kept her property deeds. It was a mess. The documents were still there, but clearly someone had touched them. Searching for something specific, on the bed, a loose sheet of paper. A message written in the same hand as the previous one. You think you won. This is just getting started. Sarah felt an icy shiver on the back of her neck. Gabe spoke with the police, presented his credentials and showed them part of his report. The officer took notes and promised to reinforce surveillance in the building, but that didn't calm her. They're not just trying to intimidate you anymore. They're marking you. They're going further. Gabe warned her. They don't want to scare you. They want you to shut up, to disappear. I'm not leaving, Sarah replied firmly. Not after all this. That night, reviewing the installed cameras, they saw something unsettling. At 3 a.m., a man in a baseball cap had stood in front of her door for over a minute. He didn't ring the bell. He just stood there, motionless, and then left. His face was not visible, but his posture, his build, were unmistakable. Kellen, the video was delivered to the authorities. Days later, someone else knocked on her door. It was a tall, slender woman with a harsh elegance, as if built through forced distrust. Yvonne Dubois, the real estate broker. The same one Gabe's report had linked to the sales of the other victims. Sarah didn't open the door. She watched her through the camera. Sarah, the woman said, looking directly into the lens. I don't want trouble, I just want to talk. I have nothing to discuss with you. You're walking a very thin line. You've done enough, leave. Things as they are and all this ends. Is that a threat? It's advice. You have no idea who you're messing with. You don't know what my family is capable of. The police already know who you all are. Yvonne laughed. It wasn't a funny laugh. It was bitter, like someone who knows they are above the law. The police won't protect you when we're inside, and believe me, we can get in whenever we want. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Yvonne left without looking back. Sarah sent the video to Gabe. He shared it with the district attorney. The case gained momentum. The complaint was formally filed under charges of fraud, identity theft, and criminal conspiracy. A warrant was being processed, but the legal system was slow. The laws didn't move with the urgency Sarah needed. She installed an electronic smart lock and hired private security. Mariama moved in with her temporarily. Gabe stopped by nightly to check everything. Even so, Sarah couldn't sleep more than 3 hours straight. The phone kept ringing at odd hours. She received empty emails, messages from fake accounts with photos of her building. The threats blended with the constant fear, but something inside her grew. It wasn't hatred, it was determination. Friday night, Mariama left to visit her mother. Sarah stayed alone for the first time in days. She took the opportunity to calmly review the papers, organize everything into folders, and scan documents. Meanwhile, a storm began to cover the sky. At 9 p.m., the hallway camera activated. Sarah checked the monitor. It was Kellen. He was standing in front of the door, soaked by the rain, wearing the same white shirt. As if he didn't care about the performance, he looked straight into the lens, unmoving. Sarah held her breath. He raised his hand, making a gesture as if waving, then approached the intercom and spoke. This house will be mine. You can bet your life on it. And he walked away. Sarah collapsed onto the sofa. Fear now had a form. It had a face, it had a voice, and there was no way this would end well. Sarah knew it as soon as Kellen walked away from the camera. This wasn't just a threat, it was a declaration of war. And the most dangerous part was that he had nothing to lose, but she did. Her peace, her reputation, her home, her life. Gabe arrived 30 minutes later. They reviewed the video together. He didn't say anything for several seconds, then he pressed his lips together, closed the laptop, and looked at Sarah with a seriousness he hadn't shown before. Time's up. For waiting, we're going after him now. Sarah nodded. She was ready. The next step was to gather the others. Gabe suggested it was time to consolidate the evidence, coordinate efforts, and show that this wasn't an isolated case but a carefully woven network of scams. Sarah made the calls. Lisa was the first to respond. Then Simone showed up. She wasn't dead, not lost. She was hiding in a different city under a different name. When she realized Kellen was looking for her, she had vanished without a trace. She had been in therapy for years. When she received Sarah's message, she hesitated, but then decided to speak. The meeting took place in a discreet location, Gabe's office. 4 chairs around a gray table, neutral walls, a window covered by blinds. Sarah arrived first, then Lisa, her demeanor already firmer. After her, Simone entered with short, nervous steps, as if everything in that space could betray her. And finally, Irene. Sarah didn't know Irene. Gabe had contacted her after reviewing Kellen's latest activities. Irene hadn't been scammed yet, but she was about to be. She owned a house in the suburbs, lived alone since her mother died, and had met Kellen at an art gallery. He approached her with the same spiel: admiration, sweetness, promises of a joint business venture. When she began to suspect something, she found an anonymous blog online where a woman was warning about her case. It was Lisa. The conversation between them was tough, but also powerful. They weren't just victims. They were survivors. Each one told her story from a different angle, but the wound was common. The deception, the manipulation, the shame, the fear. Simone was the hardest to listen to. He asked me to sell my parents' house. He promised we would open a clinic together. I gave him everything. When I started asking questions, he locked me in my own house for days. He took my phone. I had to escape through the window. No one believed me. The police didn't do anything. My sister thought I was exaggerating. I moved to another city with the little I had left. I changed my name. I didn't dare file a report until today. Lisa took her hand. Irene's eyes were filled with tears. What do we do? She asked. How do you fight someone like him? Gabe placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of the reports, the complaints, the forged documents, the call logs, the hallway camera videos, the written threats, the names of all the women contacted. The case was no longer a file, it was a time bomb. The district attorney has been informed. Gabe said, the complaint has been formalized as aggravated fraud and criminal conspiracy. We are close to getting the arrest warrant, we just need one more piece. And what is that? Sarah asked Patrice. Their eyes met. Patrice Dubois, Kellen's mother, the silent accomplice, the woman who had opened the door to every victim. The one who asked financial questions disguised as innocent conversation, the one who covered up every disappearance. She knows everything. Maybe more than him, Gabe added. But she's afraid. And the only way to break the structure is if one of the pieces cracks from the inside. Sarah thought for several minutes. She knew where Patrice lived. She knew how to knock on the door, but she didn't know if she would walk out alive. I'll go, she said, alone. I don't want her to be scared. Gabe disagreed, but finally accepted. He attached a hidden microphone and a tiny camera to the lapel of her coat. Mariama walked her to the building entrance and waited outside in the car. Sarah climbed the steps with tense legs, knocking 3 times. Patrice took a moment to open the door. Her face showed surprise, but not the feigned kind from before. It was something else, pure focus. What are you doing here? She said without hiding her discomfort. I need to talk to you alone. I didn't come to fight or yell, just to talk. Patrice hesitated but stepped aside. Sarah entered. Everything was the same as the last time. Too much order, too much silence. They sat at the dining table facing each other. Your son came to my house. He threatened me. I have evidence, recordings, testimonies. We know everything, Patrice. We know about Yvonne, about the other women. You can help us, or you can go down with them. Patrice looked down. Her fingers trembled. She didn't say anything for almost a minute. I didn't know at first, she murmured. I just thought I was helping my son get ahead. He told me it was business, that he was giving opportunities to women who didn't know how to manage their assets. And when they disappeared, Sarah asked, did you justify that, too? Patrice began to cry. They weren't loud tears, they were contained, as if she refused to give up completely. Everything got out of control. Yvonne was the one who convinced him to keep going. She's ambitious. She pushed him. I stayed quiet, and that makes me an accomplice. I know, then speak. Give your statement. Help stop this. There's no turning back now. Patrice looked her in the eyes for the first time without a shield. Promise me they won't kill him. I promise you we will seek justice. Patrice nodded. Gabe and the district attorney received her 2 days later. She gave her statement. She detailed the movements, the names, the dates. She handed over documents, including copies of contracts she had hidden out of fear. Her testimony sealed the accusation. That same week, the operation was authorized. Yvonne was arrested at her office. She had fake documents, lists of properties, and bank records of the victims. She was arrogant at first. But when they showed her the video of Patrice's statement and the evidence found, she collapsed. She started crying, shouting that Kellen had manipulated her, that he forced her, that she was just following orders. She was taken into custody without bail. The media began to sense the scandal. A network of scams affecting single, vulnerable women operating right out of their own homes. Social media filled with messages. More women wrote to Gabe and Sarah. There were other victims in other cities, in other states. Some had been silent for years. Now they felt they could speak. Sarah couldn't believe how far everything had gone. And still, the most important part was missing. Kellen was gone since his last appearance on camera. He hadn't been seen again. His phone was off. There were no bank movements, no digital trace. But Gabe didn't let up. Thursday night, Sarah's phone vibrated. It was late. Mariama was asleep. Gabe was on the screen. Sarah, we've got him. She sat up immediately. Where? In the city, at a motel in the El Rosario district. Registered under the name of Maurice Steven Suarez, an informant recognized him from the photo that circulated. We've activated the warrant. The police are on their way. Sarah stayed seated with the phone in her hand, looking out the window. Outside, another storm was beginning to form. It wasn't just water hitting the glass. It was a premonition. Something was approaching. Something that had to happen for everything to end. Kellen was in the city. It was a matter of time. Justice already had him on the radar, but the story didn't end with his location. The final act was yet to come. She didn't sleep that night. She stayed by the window, watching the lightning illuminate the buildings in the distance. Mariama slept on the sofa, exhausted from the pace of the last few days. Gabe had promised surveillance at the building entrance, a patrol car that would make constant rounds, but deep down, her true fear was that Kellen would show up without warning, without law, without mercy. At dawn, a call from Gabe startled her. Sarah, don't panic, but last night someone tried to force the back door of the building. They didn't manage to get in, but a camera in the alley caught the face. It was him. Sarah felt a cold rush through her body. What do we do now? The arrest warrant has already been issued. We are actively looking for him. You have to stay where you are. Don't go out. I'm sending to plainclothes officers to stay outside your condo. This ends this week. That same night, the silence was different, heavy, intense. At 2:15 in the morning, the cameras activated. Mariama woke up from the security system's beeping. Sarah ran to the monitor. There was Kellen again, but this time not in front of the door. This time with a lock-picking tool in his hand, forcing the smart lock. Sarah didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't tremble. She just pressed the emergency button. In seconds, Gabe was notified. Mariama grabbed her phone and called the assigned patrol car number. Sarah backed away, watching Kellen's every move on the camera. He was focused on his task. He had lost the charming man disguise. His face showed anxiety, contained fury, and desperation. A few minutes later, a loud bang interrupted his attempt. Four officers surrounded him. Kellen tried to run, but was tackled. He was subdued against the ground. He screamed Sarah's name with rage, as if she were the one stealing his life. The officers handcuffed him and dragged him out of the building. Mariama hugged Sarah without saying a word. Sarah didn't cry, didn't shake, she just closed her eyes. For the first time, she could say she had survived. The news traveled fast. The media reported the arrest of an alleged serial fraudster, accused of defrauding several women across different states. Kellen Dubois, also known as Maurice Torres, was in custody. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 5 days later. The courtroom filled with faces that knew his story from the inside. Sarah arrived accompanied by Mariama, Gabe, and a prosecutor. Lisa, Irene, and Simone were there too. Patrice arrived. Alone, no one hugged her, but everyone understood the cost she had paid for testifying against her own son. When Kellen was brought before the judge, his eyes locked on Sarah. He didn't say a word. His face was hard, with no trace of emotion. He wasn't the man who had charmed her. He was another, a hollow being, like an abandoned house that only retains its facade. The prosecutor presented the evidence, the recordings, the forged contracts, the testimonies, the bank accounts, the multiple identities. Each witness contributed a piece of the puzzle. When it was Patrice's turn to speak, the silence in the room became heavy. I was his mother, she said, and I failed as a mother. I kept silent about what I should have reported. I looked the other way when the lies became obvious. I thought I was helping my son remake his life, but what I did was support his evil. The judge listened in silence. In the end, he ordered preventative detention without bail. The trial would run its course, but Kellen would not be released to the streets again without facing justice. Sarah didn't smile, didn't celebrate. She just breathed a deep, different, free breath. Outside, the victims hugged each other. They were not the same women he had tried to destroy. Now they were different. Stronger, closer, more awakened. Gabe looked at them with respect. Mariama cried silently. Sarah only looked up at the sky. It was as if her grandmother was there watching everything. That night, Sarah went to bed early. Mariama decided to sleep in her own place for the first time in weeks. The condo was calm. Everything was in its place, everything in order. At 3 o'clock in the morning, she dreamed of her grandmother again. But this time, they weren't in the kitchen. There were no warnings, no fear. They were in an open field, a place full of sweet-smelling flowers. Clara looked at her with a smile that lit up her face. Now you are truly free, she said. You did the right thing, not just for you, but for all of them. Sarah woke up with tears in her eyes. They were sweet tears of relief, of gratitude. The sun was coming through the window. The storm was gone. Days later, she began to write, not as therapy, not as revenge, but as a legacy. Her story had to be known. It had to reach other women, those who lived with manipulated hearts, those who didn't know how to recognize abuse behind a smile, those who thought love naturally hurts, those who were silent out of fear, shame, or guilt. The book was titled, The Ones Who Woke Up in Time. It was a success. But more important than that was the network of support that formed from it. Sarah founded a nonprofit organization to help victims of psychological abuse and emotional manipulation. Irene became a counselor. Lisa, the project's accountant. Simone, after several months of recovery, dared to give public talks. Patrice, after serving her sentence for complicity, offered her testimony from the other side of shame. Kellen was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, not for love, not for betrayal, but for fraud, moral damage, and criminal conspiracy. But the deepest justice wasn't in the courts. It was internal. Sarah walked the street again without looking over her shoulder. She learned to trust again, though with wider eyes. She slept again without expecting dark dreams. She returned to being herself, but a new version, stronger, wiser, more alive. And every time someone asked her how she got out of it all, she said the same thing: it wasn't just for me. It was because someone from another place warned me, woke me up, and held me when I couldn't stand it anymore. There are battles that seem too big, monsters disguised as love, shadows that steal our breath. But when the truth prevails, when the Soul clings to the light, no deception can sustain itself forever. God does not leave without a voice those who cry out from the heart. He does not abandon those who were deceived for trusting. He does not remain silent in the face of injustice. Life, with all its chaos, also has a way of balancing itself out, sooner or later. Every seed sown in pain blossoms into truth. Every tear shed with faith turns into a sign. Every woman who rises breaks chains that others didn't even know they were wearing. And somewhere in the heavens, there are those who watch over us even though they are no longer here. Sometimes they appear in dreams, sometimes in intuitions, sometimes in an inner strength that we don't know where it comes from, but they are guiding, warning, and loving. Sarah understood it late but in time. And since then she never ignored a sign again, because the soul knows, it has always known. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see two new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.